Good morning. Thanks for having me here today. I am excited to talk to you a little bit about customer onboarding and the journey that we've been on at Boomi for about 4 years now as far as formalizing our customer onboarding process. So before that, just a little bit about me. I am Boomi's Chief Customer Success Officer. I am responsible for direct customer success, partner success, renewals, customer experience, and success operations. So that's the scope of our success organization. We have about 20,000 customers and 1,700 employees. So personally, my career path to success was not traditional. I started in IT. I did some time in HR, marketing, partnerships and alliances, sales, and about a year and a half ago, I moved over from the sales team to lead the customer success organization. So doing that in the middle of the pandemic was a very interesting thing. If you ever want to have a chat about that over coffee, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. But so today, onboarding. Why is it so important? Onboarding, while it's sometimes taken for granted as something that just happens, is important. Like really, really important. In fact, according to Donna Weber's Onboarding Matters, poor customer onboarding is the biggest cause of churn. It's ahead of relationships. It's ahead of customer service. Take a minute to think about that. So first, let's ground everyone on what do we mean when we talk about onboarding? A show of hands, how many of you have encountered the perspective that onboarding is a single customer meeting or sharing a welcome kit with customers? You're not alone. That's exactly where we were when we started this journey 4 years ago. We initiated a project where we spoke with customers, we spoke with our peers in the industry, we did industry research. And answers that we got from the team, from our customers varied from, my success rep took me out to lunch and we talked about what it would be like to work with Boomi, to, they sent me a welcome packet and we were off. So for those of you who are at that stage, you're not alone, we were there. It's really easy not easy, but it's very possible to create and change that perception. So what do we mean by onboarding when we talk about it today? Today, it's truly a cross-functional process, a journey that we take our customers through. And it starts for us in the pre-sales motion when we initially introduce customer success to the prospect at the time. And it extends all the way through the customer's initial production use case. It involves customer success, sales, professional services, implementation partners, our training team, and our community team. And given all that, it requires a lot of cross-org collaboration and processes to work really well. I love this quote. Onboarding is incredibly important. If you set your customers up for success from the beginning, the chances of retaining them and building lifelong relationships are much greater. First impressions matter, and onboarding truly is your opportunity to create a great first impression with your customers. And if it's done well, it starts a virtuous cycle that leads to increased expansion revenue and reduced churn over time. Right? You start by building trust with the customer. Once you build that trust, they're willing to share more information with you. You can better understand what their challenges are, what their struggles are, where they're looking to go in the future. And the deeper that understanding is, the more opportunity you have to identify where you can help them additionally. And you just start that cycle all over again. The other thing that I want to call out is often when you think about onboarding, there's a tendency to think about it inside out. And you get focused on what are the internal operations that we need for customer onboarding. I think it's really, really important to challenge yourself on that. You need to be thinking about it with two perspectives. And I would argue first and foremost is the customer experience. What is the experience our customers expect? What is the experience we need to provide to delight them? And then you need to marry that with what are the internal operations you need to deliver on that experience. So for Boomi, we focused on aligning the goals across these two perspectives so that we could create a seamless onboarding journey that's easy, that's coordinated, that's customer-centered, that's clear, and that's efficient. So that's a lot about kind of how we thought about onboarding going into the process. Now, what does good look like? There's a lot of information on the slide, I realize, but I'll walk you through it. So really, the critical thing for us is we focus our onboarding journey on 5 moments of truth with the customer. These are 5 critical moments in their journey where they make a decision as to whether or not they are emotionally invested in the outcome. Those 5 moments are the first customer meeting, the internal handoff, the kickoff and strategy sessions, the initial implementation, and the project launch. The first customer meeting, like I said, for us, it happens in the pre-sales process. That's when the success team first engages with the customer with the goal of building trust and making them feel optimistic about the relationship that they're about to embark on with us. We do that by clarifying our role on their account team and by demonstrating the value that we can provide through our success offerings. The second moment is the internal handoff. This is something you just got to nail it. And I know it's hard, and I know it's not always easy to get the sales teams to participate, and we struggle with this too. But it should be seamless to the customer. The sales team collects a ton of information throughout the sales cycle. And no customer wants to start their conversation with success by repeating everything they've already said again and again. So we connect the internal account team. We get them together. We do knowledge transfer session. This is where the sales team has the opportunity to brief the success team on all the conversations they have had to date. In addition to that, we look at our internal systems. If there's data in there about the customer, the success team needs to use it. At the end of the day, this is a moment that's critical on the customer journey, but we almost don't want them to even know it exists. It should be totally seamless to them so that we go into our next strategy session with them and they feel totally confident that we understand what it is they're trying to do, by when, and why. That third moment is the kickoff and strategy session, and this could be sessions. It's not a one and done thing. But this is where we're working with the customer to jointly plan and educate them about what it means to be part of the Boomi community. If you get that internal handoff done right, this is really a validation. Let's validate what outcomes you are trying to achieve. Let's validate that I understand what I heard. And it gives you a head start on having a success plan. It's super easy to do it once you've got that understanding. Then it becomes a process of agreeing on what is the process we want to follow to make sure we're tracking to those deliverables, what is the cadence that we want to have. And then lastly, we provide onboarding resources. So again, this is a conversation about there are a ton of resources that you get access to as a Boomi customer. Let's make sure you understand what all those resources are, how to effectively use them, and who to contact if you're not getting what you expect out of us. The fourth is the initial implementation. And admittedly, this is where success takes a little bit of a step back in the role with the customer. And we're focused much more on monitoring. For us, our customers generally have an implementation partner or are using Boomi PSO. And so at this point in time, we are working to coordinate with those implementers to make sure we understand the customer's key project milestones, that we are tracking to those milestones and outcomes, that we're monitoring product usage data, and that we're getting that customer to their first value. And then we come back in. At launch, customer has their first production usage. Success re-engages as the primary point of contact in the relationship. And we start to execute on our ongoing success program. But we don't want to do that before we take a minute to celebrate their success. I think there's a huge opportunity to create a human connection in this launch phase. If you take a step back and really acknowledge what your customer just did and how they help their business or their teams and achieve the outcomes that they set out to do. Underpinning all of these are operations to support and measure the process. So this is a little bit of an eye chart. I'm not going to go through all of it, but there are a couple key things that I want to highlight for you. So first of all, onboarding operations are a combination of success activities, standardized materials, and automated communications. It's all three. It's not one or the other. Second, we have onboarding processes to cover all of our customer segments, but they vary by segment, both in terms of what we use, what steps we take, and the cadence or frequency of engagement. Third is for Tech Touch. We leverage more of a digital or one-to-many approach with our Tech Touch customers in the engagement model, but we still offer live sessions for them. We do live cohort onboarding, and we do a targeted education series. We know the human connection piece matters so much, particularly in onboarding when you're just starting to form that relationship. So we've made the strategic decision to continue to embed some human interaction into our digital journey. And then lastly, don't forget to build opportunities to get customer feedback into your process, whether that's an onboarding customer satisfaction survey or a implementation satisfaction survey. Make sure you're getting customer feedback so that you can iterate and refine along the way. Now, like I said, we've been doing this for about 4 years. We've stumbled, we've pivoted, we've learned some lessons along the way. So I would be remiss if I didn't share those lessons with you so that you don't make the same mistakes we did. First, poor cross or communication and collaboration. Again, your processes need to be well defined, and you need to collect information from customers once and make sure it's distributed internally from there. Second, lack of clarity between roles. You need to have it. Get buy-in up front on the roles and ownership from all the stakeholders, and then go a step further and make sure you have a customer-facing version of those roles so that your customers know who to contact when. Next, leaving partners out of the equation. If you have a channel strategy, which Boomi does, don't forget about your implementation partners. Invite them into the process. Work with them. Make sure you're jointly sharing and tracking key milestones, objectives, and risks. They're feet on the ground. They can give you information that you might not otherwise have. Fourth, taking a vendor-centric approach and not a customer-centric one. Again, I mentioned this earlier. If you start with the internal operations and build out, you're missing the point. You need to really first start at what is the experience we want to deliver to our customers, and then align the internal operations. 5, content overload. This is a real thing. There is so much information available to customers between communities and documentations and webinars and newsletters and website collateral. It's really important you help target the right customers with the right content at the right time. Otherwise, they just start to tune you out. And then last would be failing to recognize that onboarding is an ongoing process. Again, this isn't a once and done event. Your customers will regularly have new users joining their teams, and those new users need to be onboarded too. So don't forget to think about how you're going to account for that in your onboarding process. All right, so that's where we've been, the lessons we've learned, a little bit about where we're going next. And just to set perspective, we view onboarding as a success offer. It's almost like a product for us. So our goal is to have a roadmap of what are we going to do. We continually evolve and enhance. And if you're not doing that today, I would certainly encourage you to think about it with that mind frame. Top of mind for us is building seamless digital journeys. So we have a ton of ways to digitally engage with our customers. But what we don't have is a prescriptive journey that we can guide customers through. And so that's priority number 1 for us going into next year. Second, again, is to continue on that journey for more personalized content. Making sure that we are delivering content that is relevant to the customer's profile, where they are in their life cycle with us, and what they've indicated are their preferences and interests. This will forever be on our roadmap, by the way. Like, it's not going to be something we can deliver overnight. Don't have that expectation. Next is increasing visibility into adoption data. So at Boomi, we use Gainsight. We also use Pendo. Internally, we have quite a bit of data available about what our customers are doing and how their adoption is tracking. We don't yet extend that information out to our customers. And so we are looking at a customer-facing portal that would allow customers to access that information in real time, on demand, and in a self-service fashion. Celebrating successes. I think this is really important. I think it's one of the top ways you can build brand affinity, loyalty, and a connection at a personal level with your customers. We do this today, but it's done at the success rep level. And so we're really looking at how do we up-level that, make it a standard approach that we amplify each of our customer successes. And we have a number of things that we're working on around that. But I think that not only is it a great way to build connections with your customers, it's fun. So, and then last is specialization. This is something we're giving thought to. What we're considering, at what point or what scale do we get to when having a dedicated team of onboarding specialists will provide a better and more consistent experience for our customers. I don't have the answer to this yet. It is just something that we are noodling on as we think about the next version of our customer onboarding program. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. And I was going to actually ask, Elise is here from my team. Elise is on our customer experience team and is the brains behind a lot of the thought on how we're going to move forward with onboarding. So I thought she could join me for questions as well.
Come on up. Thank you, Shannon. All right, so we're all mic'd up. We're ready to rock? Okay. Question number 1. What do you think is the number 1 or top 3 elements for success in onboarding a customer?
You want to take that one?
Top 3 elements for success. Okay, that's a good question. So the top 3, because I think there's so many. I think the first is just making sure that you do the process of what Shannon was speaking about of getting all the data internally, because that's really, really annoying to have to repeat that information over. Once you've spent so long, and our sales cycle is very long, and once you spend so long telling all your concerns and your goals to someone, and then they just hand you off and don't know, and you don't carry on that information, that's a huge miss, I think. And so I think that's very critical. And then the other critical part is making sure that you provide people with the content that they need to be successful, and making sure that it's very relevant to what their use case is. And then I think the third is truly the celebrating the success, because that really helps to build human relationships, and it also helps the customer to recognize that they achieved something big and really awesome, and helps you to also have conversations about what can we do in the future because we've achieved this goal. So I think that's important in your personal life, recognizing your goals, but then also carrying that over.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Working with partners impacts our control over onboarding. How do you keep momentum with a less than stellar or gatekeeping partner?
This is a tough one. So I come out of the channel space at Boomi, which I think does give me a little bit of perspective on this. It's a delicate balance. I think there are a few things you can do. One is make sure they understand your onboarding process, and make sure they understand that they are included and invited to participate in that. I think so often partners think if you do onboarding, you're going to try to keep them at arm's length and vice versa. And if you can be upfront with them to really set the expectations of no, we want you to be part of this. We want to share information with you. We want you to share information with us, because at the end of the day, we both have a shared goal of making sure this customer is successful. So I think that's really critical. Secondly is we are actually investing this year in building out an implementation partner success team. So we have a channel team that works very closely with our partners, but we don't yet have a dedicated success org that works with the implementation partners. And I've got one person now who's building out that program, but I think some of the key elements there are really making sure that when you design your partner program, you're clear on the requirements and expectations you have of those partners. and you have ways to incent them to meet those expectations. And where I think a lot of companies fall short is you are actually measuring them and holding them accountable for meeting those expectations.
Thank you. All right. Question on working with professional services. How does Boomi manage and deal with the line between CS and PS?
We really try to think of it as an accounting approach. So in fact, even like the internal handoff, our next iteration of onboarding, we are probably not going to call it a handoff because we don't want anybody in sales or services or success really think, nobody ever really hands off the customer. We're expanding who it is that that customer has access to work with to make them successful. I think it's really important that you build a super strong relationship with your professional services leaders. And I think it's really important that you have swim lanes and you're clear on who leads when and who's delivering what. When does success take a little bit of a backseat, like again during that implementation process, versus when does PSO take a backseat? But I would tell you, I'm on the phone with our leader of professional services probably 5 times a week, maybe a day, depending on what's going on. So I think it's you got to invest in the partnership and you got to agree on the swim lanes.
So, what are some ways you can rebuild the relationship with customers who have had a terrible first impression?
Good question. I think it's really being empathetic and being transparent and acknowledging where you fell down. I think, look, we're not always going to get it right, but I know if we have the opportunity to correct it, we're going to put everything we can into fixing it. And I think you just have to go into a conversation and acknowledge where things went wrong, what you learned from it, and what you're going to do differently going forward.
Okay. Another question for the Boomi team here. How do you give customers visibility into their onboarding, where they're at, how they're progressing, and what else needs to be done?
Today, that is handled via regular account meetings between the customer success rep and the customer. That is something we do more actively at the mid-touch and high-touch level. We can do a better job at the tech-touch level, and that's why we are looking at things like an external-facing portal so that customers have access to self-serve on that information. We use Gainsight, so the other thing at tech-touch is, we do use CTAs and triggers, so if we know things are not where they need to be, we get a success rep engaged to help make sure we course correct.
Thank you. This is an interesting question that I think some of us run into. How do you break through with customers who are not invested in the onboarding process?
I think, honestly, first and foremost, you have to treat that as a risk. It's got to be a risk that you put the red flag on the account and you start working a playbook to get them engaged. And that can be, for us, that can be everything from going back to the AE and the sales leadership that originally sold the deal and making sure, because oftentimes what happens is it's sold at one level and the onboarding team is at a different level. And so you want to go back into the level where you sold it because they understand why they're doing it, what's important. And often if they're not engaged, there's probably a communication breakdown between the buyer and the person that you're working with. And so I would focus first and foremost on correcting that communication breakdown. If after that the customer still doesn't understand why they're doing it, I think you got a different problem that you gotta figure out. Anything you'd add?
I would add, kind of to make sure that this doesn't happen in cases is making sure that in the sales slides, you get something in there that highlights the value of onboarding and get your sales team invested in sharing how valuable onboarding is because they have that relationship with the customer. And so hopefully to mitigate this in some cases.
Thank you. Okay. One more question here. How are you selecting industry benchmark data to show your customers if they ask how their adoption compares to other clients you work with?
It's a great question. I don't have a great answer for this from an industry standpoint. Boomi is, we are an integration platform as a service provider, so effectively cloud middleware. So it's much more of a horizontal play. We do absolutely have industries and verticals, but that is not necessarily what drives similarities across customers in their adoption journey. So we would work closely with our ProServe to understand where the customer's at in their implementation and where they expect it to be. I do expect as we grow and mature that we'll get more. Pendo is a new tool, and so we'll get more data coming out of Pendo that feeds into our Gainsight implementation and our team. It's a work in progress.
Okay, I think we have time for one or two more. So here's another one. Do you have a dedicated CSM team for the Tech Touch customer for onboarding?
We don't have them dedicated to onboarding, but we have a dedicated CSM team for Tech Touch customers. So something that is probably fairly unique at Boomi is every one of our direct customers has a named customer success representative. And what differs is how frequently we engage and the level of that engagement, but every single customer gets introduced to a success rep by name, in a call, an email, and at the Tech Touch level, they're customer success advisors. They have a higher account ratio, but we have customer success advisors. At the mid-touch level, we have customer success managers, and then at the high-touch level, we have customer success directors.
Okay. And one other question. How can CS influence better onboarding when it's run by professional services?
I would say two things. One, it gets back to building that really strong partnership with professional services. That's a relationship that you need to invest in top down. And secondly, I think, again, bring it back to that customer experience conversation. Don't get hung up on the swim lanes or the internal processes first. Go at it through the lens of, this is the customer experience we all agreed we need to provide. Here's where we, based on the feedback we're getting from customers, we believe we're falling short. How do we work together to address this? I would be as data-driven as possible and take as much emotion out of that conversation as you can.
And finally, what's the single thing you want everybody to walk away with from your conversation today?
For me, it's
boil it down.
It's that first slide. It's that onboarding really, really matters. You have the opportunity to get off on the right foot with a customer and take, I can't remember, was it 23% of churn is attributed to poor onboarding? If you can take that off the table immediately, what a difference you can make.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you again for joining us today.